What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Need a Haircut coming at you with another video. Today we're doing something a little different. We're doing a bit of power scaling. So a topic which I've seen, well, I haven't seen a lot recently, but I used to see a lot just before Onigashima really kicked off, just before Roof Piece, was the idea of like, what if the current Straw Hats were in the events of a previous arc? So like, if the current power levels of the Straw Hats was given to the Straw Hats of a previous arc, how would the events of the arc play out differently? And like how that would change the events of the story overall and stuff like that. And I haven't seen it a lot, but I haven't seen it a lot recently, but there's been a major kind of power boost given to nearly every Straw Hat during the events of Onigashima. So I thought, why not, give it a hand? And obviously, from the title of this video and just the law of averages, because this is probably the most popular one to talk about, I'm going to be talking about Marineford today. It was a very impactful arc. It's the arc that had the death of Ace, the death of Whitebeard, and without the events of this arc, the Straw Hats wouldn't have gone on a time skip, which means they wouldn't have ever reached the power levels they were at post time skip, which means they would have never gotten to end up where they are currently. But I was kind of thinking, how would it play out differently if they never, if everything went right because they were way stronger than they were at that time. Obviously Luffy and Jinbei were the only two at it originally, but in this hypothetical, all the Straw Hats are there. And how would it play out differently if, would they need a time skip? Would Ace and Whitebeard be dead? I don't know. That's foreshadowing. But just before we get into the video, I'll give a rundown of like kind of the power-ups that the Straw Hat's gotten, if there's an actual tangible way to describe their power-ups. So let's just jump right in there, and then we'll head straight into the actual events of the war. So since the time of Marineford, Luffy has gotten a lot of major power boosts. So first, he got trained in how to use both observation, or not both, but observation, conquerors, and armament hockey by Rayleigh on Ruskaina Island. And but the at the current point in the story, obviously that happened after Marineford, but by the current point in the story where we are now, he has the advanced forms of all three. So he's even more powerful then. Um, yeah, along with that, he's able to use Gear Second and Gear Third just whenever without any or seemingly any drawbacks compared to before time skip where he'd be taken out of the fight for a long time if he was using Gear Second or Gear Third. And on top of this, he also has a Gear 4 Bound Man and Gear 4 Snake Man currently, which have been shown to put him on par with like some of the highest tier fighters in the world. Yeah, but as I mentioned, nearly no other Straw Hat was actually at the events besides Jinbei. So in this hypothetical, they were there. So we'll talk about Zoro next. He'd obviously be a major addition to the Whitebeard side. He has his, extremely good sword techniques. But recently as well, he has armament hockey. But recently as well, he's gained the access to Conqueror's hockey, which he didn't have properly. Like he couldn't use it on demand or anything until the King fight, where he actually realized he had it thanks to Enma. So, like, obviously, I'm not going to spend long running down Zoro's powers because it's basically just sword techniques. Uh, yeah, he will be like a third Conquerors added to the Whitebeard side. And that's not including Ace, obviously, because he couldn't use it while he was in Sea Stone. And Whitebeard, I we'll see the third in a while. We'll just say Whitebeard I wouldn't count as one because he couldn't use it at the time on demand. That's why Luffy had to use it when they were about to execute Ace. So Nami is next. She's had major power boosts in the post time skip, but particularly in Wano. So during the time skip, she trained on Witheria with the Weather Wizards, and she has like an insanely refined control of weather techniques now, and she understands how to make different kind of weather techniques using her staff and stuff. But also during the raid on Onigashima, she got Zeus permanently. So she now has part of Big Mom's power. So with that, I think honestly she might be like Vice Admiral level, and she would be a very handy member of the Whitebeard side of the war. Yeah, she probably has the highest crowd control potential of all of the people on that side, besides Whitebeard himself. Uh, so yeah, like I think Nami is a huge help. Usopp, unfortunately, not going to be as big of a help. He's the support fighter, I think he'd kind of just has his pop greens, which are really strong, don't get me wrong. Like they put him at a very high level, but compared to the rest of the Straw Hats, he's really not there. So Sanji would be next up, and he's another heavy hitter for the side. Um, he has both armament and observation hockey. He's more focused on observation than armament. Uh, so on top of this, in recent times, he has I won't run down the powers he has since the time skip. It's basically just like the moonwalk and yeah, Diable Jambe, which he had before the events of Marineford, even though he wasn't there anyway. But so during Onigashima, he awakened his latent potential exoskeleton from the Vin smokes. So now he has that exoskeleton, meaning that his body is like extremely durable now. And we saw he was able to like fix broken bones just by like doing nothing. They just fixed themselves outright. Um, and he was even able to like upgrade Diable Jambe due to his exoskeleton, making it so he has a more durable body. He was able to upgrade it from Diable Jambe to Ifrit Jambe. So that's very good for him. He was able to take down Queen with it, which is a second level Yonko commander, but I think Queen was barely weaker than King. I think King would win the fight just because of matchups, but I think Queen is like on that same level because they also have barely a discrepancy in their bounties. I know bounties don't mean everything, but still. But so that's Sanji, another heavy hitter for the team. So next we'll move on to Chopper, first of the Grand Line Straw Hats. Uh, and I think Chopper would be kind of with Nami and Usopp doing crowd control. With his so since the time skip, he's gained access to most of his form changes without having to use a Rumble Ball. But also using a Rumble Ball, he's able to access Monster Point at will for I think it's 30 minutes at this point. I think with Caesar Clown's modifications, it reached 30 minutes. Um, so the problem with that is, though, after the 30 minutes, he kind of goes into chibi form, like how Luffy did with Gear Third before the time skip. So he would need someone to like defend him if he's going to use Monster Point. But I honestly don't think he'd need to, and we'll get into the whole thing in a while of the actual events. But I don't think he'd need Rumble Balls to go in. I don't think he'd need Monster Point at all. So next up we have Robin. She has access to what I believe is advanced armament hockey from the attacks she learned from like Sabo and Koala and Hack. I think it's advanced armament anyway. And combined with that, the devil form that she showed against Black Maria, we still don't know what that is. I think it is just fully formed version of her devil fruit with armament hockey coding. But I think she'd be able to take on like up to Vice Admiral level Marines. I think she is that strong, to be honest, with the ability to just form hands from anywhere or legs or anything and use them on people. I think as long as she can get the people by surprise, she'll win. So Frankie is next up. He's highly threatening to the Marines. So, for the purpose of this, we're assuming he still has the Frankie Shogun. I know it was destroyed during his fight with Sasuke, but his major ability is the Frankie Shogun. We can assume he had time to fix it and prepare it for the war. So, combined with all of the tech he can use, like his lasers and stuff, he's basically just a massive walking tank. Like, it's made with waffle metal, which means it's nearly indestructible. Like, the only times it's been shown to be kind of damaged was with Sasaki, obviously, and with Baby Five from the Doflamingo Pirates, who was able to get through it by turning into a massive scythe, and she barely got through the arm, first off. She was turned into a massive scythe and hit it at a perfect angle to just about break through it. And so I think he'd be able to take out most Marines up to Vice Admiral level because, like, I don't think any of them are going to be breaking through it very easily, you know? And yeah, I think he'd be a very big fighter in it. So next up we have Brook. Unfortunately, while Brook is the Soul King, I will mention that we don't really know like the level of power Brook has. Like it's very difficult to gauge. All of his powers are soul based, and he's never actually had a 1v1 fight in the story. But some of the powers we do know he has is the ability for his soul to leave his skeleton, his body, whatever you want to say. Channel the power of ice from hell, as far as we know. It's either soul ice or hell ice. He has some like weird magical musical powers where he's able to channel music into people's souls to get them to do stuff for him. And we don't understand the rest of his powers, but we do know he has other powers because his his soul fruit, his revive fruit, was able to interact with Big Mom's soul fruit in some way. We don't really understand how, but we do know it was able to. And if he's able to tap into that, even without it being Big Mom, then it could be an insanely powerful ability. Um, so Jinbei is the only other Straw Hat who was at Marineford. He's a master of fishman martial arts. He I don't think he's actually gotten any new powers since Marineford, but he may have like refined his abilities in the 2 years since, but I'm not gonna touch on that. He could be like Isaac Netero in Hunter x Hunter, where he goes up to the mountains and trains for like 2 years on end, just throwing punches in the snow. And our final Straw Hat, I know this is probably controversial, but I think Yamato will be a Straw Hat by the end of Wano. So I will include her in the list. She's a holder of a mythical zone, so that means the Whitebeard Pirates would have another mythical zone on their side. Um, she has advanced conquerors hockey. She has, we can assume, advanced armament and observation hockey as a result of being the daughter of Kaido. You can assume she was probably trained in these things as a child. So this means that she's the third Conqueror's Hockey user of the Straw Hats with Luffy and Zoro. And the Whitebeard Pirates would go from having just Whitebeard and Luffy, if you even want to include Whitebeard, to having two more in the form of Zoro and Yamato, Conqueror's Hockey users who can tap into it at will, which would be insanely good for them. It would tip the tides in their balance massively. So just before we get into the actual talk about the war, I'll quickly just say that for the purpose of this, the Grand Fleet is not going to be involved. Uh, you can assume that the Grand Fleet would still form for the Straw Hats, but you can just say that like they aren't there. So for the actual war, we're going to say that the Straw Hats don't arrive until the original point where they arrive. Uh, the Straw Hats in this case, I'm referring to the Impel Down crew, and so they don't. So the actual Straw Hats don't arrive until they would have arrived originally. But I'm also saying the Impel Down crew are still there as well. I won't really be touching on them much, but they are still cutting about the field. Um, so this means that like the first salvo of attacks, Aokiji freezing the bay and all the waves on the sides, Oars Junior's charge, they all happen. So that's not changed. Um, so after that, the Straw Hats arrive. And this is where it changes the events. This is where like things start to go differently. So I believe that Luffy would open the fight just by outright using a Blast of Conqueror's Hockey. I think that would make sense. I think it would be kind of like in Fishman Island where they do it to the captured pirates of the Fishman pirates. So that would take out I don't think even half, but it would take out a good few like fodder characters and like non-officer level characters. So after this, I believe that like Nami, Usopp, and Chopper would be kind of staying in the bay and like taking down fodder, working with the Whitebeard Pirates, like affiliate crews, affiliates, friends, whatever you want to call them. So I think that would kind of help. I think some of the commanders would stay to help, but only for a short time. I believe that most of the warlords will be engaged. Yeah, Hancock's going to be fighting everyone, same as she was. Moria would probably be hiding from the Straw Hats, just out of fear of the encounter in Thriller Bark, because at this point we can assume that the Thriller Bark Straw Hats are as strong as the Wano Straw Hats as well. So Mihawk's going to still be fighting Vista, and Kuma is going to be doing what he's told, which is not much, as we saw in the actual events of the war. But the only warlord who wouldn't be like engaged would be Doflamingo, because I think he'd actually like try to engage Luffy in a fight straight away. I think he'd go straight for him, and I don't think it would last very long. I think Luffy with Advanced Conqueror's Hockey is actually able to beat Doflamingo without even having to go into a gear form. I think he's that strong. Uh, this would all take place like before the Straw Hats are even out of the bay. So like seven Straw Hats are still going to be left in the group moving forward, along with Marco, Izo, and Jozu. They're going to be like the vanguard of fighting. Yeah, I think Jinbei, along with Crocodile, because Crocodile's still going to be there, would be engaging like the vice admirals who are pushing forward into the bay and kind of holding them back. So like the actual differences are noticeable when they actually leave the bay, that kind of 10-person vanguard, I suppose. So obviously, Robin would be a primary target for the Marines to try to take, capture, kill, whatever. So I think Frankie and Brooke would basically be on like a guard duty for her. So the three of them would be staying together as a group and fighting like maybe not vice admirals, maybe they'd be fighting rear admiral kind of level enemies. Um, but like unnamed ones, obviously. Um, yeah, like Smoker and stuff wouldn't be who they'd be fighting, but like people on that level, you know? Um, and they provide like general support to the rest of the Vanguard. Uh, so at this point, I believe more of the commanders would be kind of joining back up, so it wouldn't be just like seven Straw Hats and three Whitebeard commanders. I think it would be like well, at this point, four Straw Hats and maybe like six or seven Whitebeard commanders, but like so the amount of people would flip, but I don't think it would be like unbalanced, and we'll get into that now. Um, so like that iconic panel of Luffy kind of standing in front of the three admirals with the mast, I think would be replaced with a lineup of like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Yamato, and then Marco, Izo, and Jozu standing in front of the admirals and squaring off to fight them. And Luffy would continue on. They'd let him, well, the admirals wouldn't, but the rest of the lineup, the other six of them, would help him to get past the admirals as they kind of team up. It would be like 2v1s on the different admirals. So I think it would be Marco and Sanji versus Kizaru, Zoro and Jozu versus Aokiji, and Yamato and Izo versus Akainu. Um, I think they'd be kind of stalemates, like none of those six are actually on an admiral's level, I think, but with someone else who's also kind of on a good level but not quite admiral level, I believe that they'd be able to stalemate the admirals. So like I think that the only one of those pairings that's actually like essential would be Yamato and Izo though. Like the other four could be mixed up in whatever way, but I do think Yamato and Izo would have to go together because I think Yamato would kind of have you know, a like moment of realizing that Izo is kind of from Odin's past, and she'd kind of be like, "Oh my God!" But also, I think Jozu would end up losing his arm to Aokiji. I don't think that's changing. Sorry, Jozu, but so yeah, you may notice like Whitebeard still hasn't joined the fight. That's because up to this point he hasn't needed to, due to the Straw Hats like tipping the favor and balance of the pirates in this. I think that like the events play out differently. So Squard isn't like talked to by Akainu, so he doesn't end up stabbing Whitebeard, which in the original kind of broke the morale of the Whitebeard pirates for a while, and then the pacifistas came after that. So I think all of that kind of plays out differently. So the pacifistas aren't like a straw that broke the camel's back. They're more like, like a straw, but like one on the back of a camel who can like carry a lot more straws, I suppose. But I think Whitebeard will start to make his move when he sees Luffy kind of. We're gonna assume that Luffy is climbing that ramp as before. I think he'll start to make his move then because Luffy will punch Garp out of the way again. I think Garp won't bother fighting. I think he'll do the exact same thing he did before, where he'll just let Luffy kind of punch him out of the way. Um, but I also think that even if Garp did fight anyway, Luffy would beat him at this point. I think he's stronger than him. So at this point, we have Luffy and Whitebeard on the execution stand with Sengoku and Ace. I think Whitebeard would be fighting Sengoku because they're like the old rivals, like Garp and Roger. It was Whitebeard and Sengoku. And Luffy is using the key that Boa slipped him earlier in the fight to open Ace's cuffs, um, or at least like attempting to do so. I don't think they'll need Mr. Three's help for it at all this time. So yeah, all the admirals are kind of being engaged in 2v1, so they're unable to kind of get away to stop this from happening. And Ace would be freed from his cuffs. And so it'd be Luffy, Ace, and Whitebeard on the execution stand trying to get away. Well, Whitebeard would be holding off Sengoku, and Ace and Luffy would be trying to get away. So I think it's like a massive effort to flee at this point. I think like the 2v1s would end, the teams of two would kind of regroup with Ace, Luffy, and Whitebeard, and they'd just kind of be like trying to get away. I think Akainu chasing everyone still happens, but I don't think he manages to lure Ace away to try to engage him to defend Whitebeard, which was originally what led to Ace's death. So I don't think that happens again. I do think they get back out into the bay, and I think Whitebeard unleashes the actual power of his Devil Fruit and levels the island, or at least nearly levels the island. So I think that kind of causes a distraction, which leads to the Marines like scrambling to not fall into the ocean. This is where it kind of gets comical. I think Blackbeard shows up at this point, and everything has not gone the way he expected. So I think him and his new crew, who he just broke out of Impel Down, are kind of like, what? So I think he'd just kind of run away. I think his new crew would probably just leave him, and he doesn't have a second Devil Fruit as a result of this because he doesn't get Whitebeards, and he's losing his protection of being a warlord, so he's in shambles. And I think that puts him back to square one, but in this version, he's getting hunted by the Whitebeard pirates for revenge afterwards. I think he'll be hunted by the Whitebeard pirates for being the person who killed Thatch and also for turning an ace. I think that would make the rest of the Whitebeard pirates want to hunt him down. And this is when things start to like go from bad to worse for the Marines. Obviously, I said the chase is still happening, and that's when Shanks and the boys pull up. They have their "this war is over" moment. The Marines will give up, and with the power of two full Yonko crews and the Straw Hats, who would be dubbed the Goko crew after the result of this war, their performance in it, I think the Marines would just not be able to stand up to them. So in this obviously like fan fiction timeline, what's the new world order after the events of Marineford? So the balance of power would obviously be tipped in favor of the pirates as the Yonko system is turned into a Goko system with the Straw Hats as the Gokos. Uh, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the Grand Fleet still exists in this timeline. But beyond this, the warlords would be enshambled as there's at most like four of them left, with Jinbei, Blackbeard, and Moria being out of the system. But also like Boa would probably leave in order to be a part of the the Straw Hats system. Um, so it would leave the world government with just three warlords, at which point I think they would end up just overhauling the system at this point instead of waiting for the Reverie. Maybe the SSG gets put in as well, or maybe they just get rid of the warlords entirely at this point. And so this would be like this would obviously be like pretty poorly written if this was how the events actually played out, but the hypothetical situation is kind of like crazy, you know. In this version of time where there's time travel backwards as well, the entire battle does go in favor of the Whitebeard pirates because the Straw Hats are such a good addition, and this is why, like, I'm just going to take this time. This video is basically just to say that the Straw Hats are a Yonko level crew nowadays, and yeah, that's regarding as well any weights that are currently holding them down in any in recent chapters, you know, weight. But anyway, that's the video. If you enjoyed, please consider dropping a like. Please consider subscribing. You know, all that good stuff. Ring the bell. You know, and drop a comment saying what you think might have played out differently. Or else you could just, you know, build up your rage inside and over the next course of several years, over the course of, you know, after being so enraged by this video, you could just explode on someone else, or you could just leave a comment, which is much healthier. But anyway, that's the video. If you enjoyed, as I said, you know, drop a like, comment, subscribe.